So next, I'd like to invite Robin Chase. Robin's been a great inspiration. She's been a transport entrepreneur. Robin, please come up. Robin founded the largest car-sharing company in the world, a Zipcar. Sure. And, we'd like you to share how you made things happen. Please come.
I was encouraging her to be short because this is going to be something quite different. You guys out there are incredibly amazing and are going to do even more amazing things. And one of the things I have on you is that I have gray hair and I'm older. So I'm going to be just talking about, I think the theme of what I want to say is perseverance. And so this is my inspiration for the moment. So here I am, showing myself at age 42 when I started Zipcar. And that's all I'm going to say about that. I had 3 fantastic children. Doing this photo was killing for them because it took about 2 hours, and my son's knees were bright red. My 6-year-old daughter had been hanging, and my oldest daughter had the lucky seat. So this is just a story of perseverance. Oh, wait, I want to go back. What I learned when I did Zipcar was, as you know, transportation is the center of the universe. And that's when I understood that. It took me, I had never realized it before. It's the glue that makes everything possible in our lives. It's the glue to access to opportunity, access to education, to friends, to jobs, to healthcare. So that's why I realized that I had to do this for the rest of my life because it was such an incredible, important space to be in. And we'll later talk about climate change. So then, in 2007, still older than before, but younger than now, I started a company called Go Loco, which was a real ride sharing, as in people sharing cars between cities going from one place to another. I launched this in 2007, and I closed it in 2009 and gave half the money back to venture capitalists. And what I realized was I could not make this happen in the US, and I think sadly, to date, we see that it is still impossible to make happen in the US, and the one success in the world is BlaBlaCar. And I think the competition for them is high-priced trains and buses, and that's what they're competing against. They're not competing against driving your own car, which we know is too cheap. So, moving on. I'd say right after Go Loco, during those years is when I realized that climate change was the most important thing in the world. And I'm having a challenge. There we are. So I just want to orient you to this graph. This is, globally, is this year hotter or colder than the 20th century average? And if you've been born since 1980, you have never experienced a cooler than average year on a planetary basis. And here's where 2015 was on that, 2016, 2017, we've already warmed the planet almost by 1 degree centigrade. And so scientists are telling us that we'll be going up by plus 5 or 6 degrees if we continue as business as usual. And just to depress us even more, this is, for me, I thought, what does it feel like to warm a planet by 5 or 6 degrees? How do I interpret that number? So this is, the last time it was minus 4.5 degrees was the last ice age. And that was 20,000 years ago. And I'm just going to throw up here. Here is ice on top of city skylines. And my bed in Boston would be about here. And so if you want to feel like, what does it feel like to warm a planet by 4.5 degrees, it's the difference between this last ice age 20,000 years ago, in which all of North America and Europe was under kilometers of ice, to today. That's what it feels like to warm by 4.5 degrees. And we have already done 1 degree, and we're doing this in 85 years. So when we talk about this being an existential threat, it is an existential threat, meaning will you exist or not? Will humans exist or not? And so since I figured this out, I have been even more persevering on this journey. And as we know, transportation is 27% of that. And so indeed, I find this the most compelling place to work. So moving on. In 2000, I was looking at dates. I think 2010 is when I first met Mary Crass, and I moved to Paris to do peer-to-peer car sharing. It turned out that that was the exact right location to be doing peer-to-peer car sharing, because we did not succeed. We were like number 2 or 3, and we merged with the number 1 in the world called Drivey, which originated in Paris as peer-to-peer car sharing. And there you can see I'm aging. I'm starting to get some white hair. It's happening. Then I did Venium. I looked up these numbers in 2012, and Venium is a vehicle communications company that uses many parts of the spectrum to take data from the vehicle into the cloud, and it is something that I am deeply enamored with and have been for years, which is making use of mesh networking rather than, so right today, if you think when you make a phone call, it goes up to a satellite and back, what an incredibly crazy distance to travel, and it's very, there's no resilience. Mesh networking is when each device becomes a repeater as well as a cell tower, a repeater as well as a receiver, and these wireless signals will flow between different wireless devices. Just enough about that. This company is still happening. I'm very pleased. I'm not the CEO. I'm just a co-founder, and I hired, and we have the person, my co-founder is the person who is the real network engineer expert. More recently, or what I'm working on today, is something called the shared mobility principles, and larger still. ITDP was one of the participants in this. Just about a year ago today, I convened 10 of the largest city and transport experts around the world to say, I felt that there was so much noise of advice in the transport sector that mayors might not realize that we actually are all telling the same message. And I was talking to a large company, a transport company, that said, cities don't even tell us what they want, and so then they yell at us when we don't do it. So I thought, oh my gosh, there is actually something that unifies us all. And so this is C40, ICLEI, ITDP, NRDC, SLOCAT, SUMC, Transportation for America, and WRI, and Rocky Mountain Institute. We spent 7 tortured months. I felt like it was the Paris Agreement being negotiated, getting it down. I'm just going to go forward and I'll come back. And so these are these shared mobility principles. The larger gist, the shared vision that we all have together, is that our future cities will be multimodal and integrated. Vehicles will be right-sized, shared, and zero-emission. You guys don't need to take a photograph because you will go to sharedmobilityprinciples.org and you will become supporters of this. And I'm just going to zoom back. February 5th, we pulled together, I think it was at that moment, 15 of the world of people who were doing, private sector companies who were doing passenger service delivery to sign on to the principles. And since then, 60 have signed on, so this is a larger piece. So I'd say these companies together are probably moving more than 100 million people every day on shared services. And I really was just going towards this goal that we want everyone everywhere to realize we actually are all going in the same direction for cities. We all have the same place, and to make it very, very clear, and we stand on these shared principles. And these principles are principles. What I also find incredible about transportation is the intense complexity of it. And so I'm on stage a lot, and I was asked recently, and it just kind of crushed me. The first question was, so Robin, what's the one thing you want me to do when I get home to my town? And I just thought, oh, like, I can't tell you the one thing because I don't know. Are you Boulder, Colorado, or are you Mumbai? I would tell you something different as being the first thing. And so these principles are really principles. The execution of these principles relies on you guys, and everyone is private sector and government and individuals to all say we want these same things. And so just calling out some things that are so obvious for us, plan cities and mobility together. What a concept. Yes, it's definitional that we have to do this. Focus on moving people, not cars. Indeed, seems quite obvious. But as we move and, talking about what we're talking today, design for equitable access. Yes, design for equitable access. There's a lot of people in your city. We should be including all of them. Things that are very dear to my heart is number 6, transition towards zero emissions. I feel like now we don't even need to say that, call that out. It's just underneath everything. But number 7, seek fair user fees across all modes. I'm really struck by the fact that mayors around the world are saying, you know what? We don't care whether you take your bike that has zero emission and a very small footprint, or you take your 25-year-old minivan that you never ever maintain, this heavily polluting, or you get in a bus with 30 other people. It's all equal to us. Well, of course it's not equal. But from a price signal standpoint, and from how we're giving use we're making on highways and on roads, we're saying it's the same thing. We don't care. When in fact, we do really care. Number 8, deliver public benefits via open data, a really key piece of infrastructure as we move towards a digitized way of moving of our entire world and accessing transport. So I urge you guys to really go sign up and to use these, and this is an open source idea, an open source website, really anyone, everywhere. You don't have to ask anyone, just do it. Just take it, use it, sign people up. It is made for all of us. And so lastly, I'm just going to close with this. I am working, I have just gotten some money to pull together a worldwide collaborative. Really, again, on this kind of open source feeling that the goal is to get everyone everywhere to be thinking, how can we channel the technology-driven disruptions in the mobility sector to build and rebuild cities that are sustainable, livable, and just. I look at this that in the transportation sector, because of smartphones and GPS and wireless and connected vehicles and autonomous vehicles, is completely changing how we work, how we consume, and how we move. And I feel like in the transportation sector, it's these tectonic plates that are completely in motion everywhere. What we need to make sure is when those plates cool and solidify, we've taken advantage of this flux that's happening so that in cities we are profoundly and certainly without question on the side of cities where transport is zero emission, with a preponderance of walking, biking, and shared modes as being the de facto norm, and personal vehicles will be the second-class citizens, where today we have the reverse. And so we need to have this rebalancing of how we move people in cities. That's all I have to say. Thank you.